Hey, what is going on, guys? It's DK back at you with another video here for an early breakdown of Week 1 for the NFL regular season. Real quick before I try to break down the slate, um, I will have my Twitch stream in the description below. I really would appreciate if you guys go ahead and give me a follow over there. I'm probably going to be streaming about an hour before lock, each slate before the regular season, so I really appreciate if you guys would follow me there. And obviously, if you guys are enjoying the content so far, like this video and subscribe if you haven't. So, all right, let's try to break down this Week 1 slate. We got about a week and a half until regular season football, so really excited. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into this. So, at quarterback today, there's a couple tiers. There's the top tier here with Mahomes and Jameis Winston, who are going to go pretty low owned, but do have some upside. Mahomes, obviously, that Kansas City offense is just insane. They run a really fast pace. Obviously, he was amazing last year. Jacksonville defense is pretty solid, but Mahomes, in tournaments, he has a lot of upside. Same thing here with Jameis. This Tampa Bay offense is going to be much improved from last year. There's a lot of hype around Jameis Winston, Chris Godwin, O.J. Howard. So, I think Tampa Bay's offense is pretty good. So I think Jameis is worth a look as a spun up. Again, I think both these guys, Mahomes and Winston, go pretty low owned, but they do have some upside. Now let's get to the more chalkier plays at quarterback, and two guys I really like. One being Lamar Jackson at 6K. So, I think he's going to be pretty popular, but for good reason. He is a great rushing quarterback. Now, Baltimore said they don't want him to rush as much as he did last year, but he's still a good passing quarterback as well. But he has that upside on the ground, which I really like. So yeah, I think Lamar Jackson is going to be one of the chalkier options in the slate, but like I said, for good reason. The other quarterback that I think is going to be the ultimate chalk here is going to be Kyler Murray at 5.6. So Arizona. Basically, they came out and said, they want to run the most plays in the NFL. They want to be like the fastest paced team. That's great for fantasy purposes, obviously, on the offensive side. So, Kyler Murray, he obviously has that rushing upside as well. So, yeah, 5.6K, I think that's just way too cheap. Obviously, he's unproven. He's a rookie. But, it's that offense. They're going to be so fast paced that it's just great for fantasy. So, Kyler Murray, I think he's going to be probably the chalkiest option at quarterback, but I think for good reason. I think he is just way too underpriced here at 5.6K. There are some other quarterbacks here in the mid-range you can consider, but the last guy I'm going to talk about here is, where is he? Jacoby Brissett. So obviously we got the stunning news of Andrew Luck retiring a few days ago. 4.4K for Brissett is obviously really cheap, and Brissett's a decent quarterback. We saw him start for Indy a couple years ago, and he was okay. Also, what I do like about him is he does have some rushing upside as well. So for really cheap, I think Brissett is worth a look. But is it worth saving $1,200 from Kyler Murray? I don't know. I think Kyler Murray has a lot more upside. But again, if you need a guy for salary relief, I think Brissett is a good option. So that's kind of a brief overview of quarterback. So let's move on to running back here. So running back, any of the top three here with Ezekiel Elliott, Barkley, and McCaffrey are going to be good options. So Zeke, they said, there's confidence that they can get a deal done before week 1. Obviously, if he's not going to play, then you could look to Tony Pollard, who I'll talk about in a bit here. But, Zeke, if he's going to play, there's nothing bad to say about him. Same with Saquon. Only thing, really bad to say about Saquon is just that Giants offense is not going to be good. I mean, they're just going to feed Saquon, but, opposing teams are going to stack the box. So that's the only thing that really worries me about Saquon. And then McCaffrey, really like this play as well. The over-under, too, in this game, I think it's like 51. So one of the higher over-unders for week 1. So McCaffrey, I mean, he's just a great PPR back. He's a 3-down back. So, yeah, there's really nothing bad to say about him. Todd Gurley, I'm kind of staying away from. The Rams said they're going to limit his workload. Still got the injury lingering from last year. Kind of going to stay away from Todd Gurley. David Johnson, really like this play as well as a spend up. So he was obviously a little disappointing last year, but that Arizona offense was just terrible. He still produced. They would just run David Johnson up the middle like every time, and he still produced. Pretty solid fantasy, production. So now we got this year with Arizona's offense. Again, they said they want to run the most plays. They want to be the fastest paced team in the NFL. That's great for fantasy purposes. I already talked about how I like Kyler Murray. Really like David Johnson as well. So yeah, I think he's another top option you got to consider. And then we get to some of the mid-tier guys. There's a lot of good, solid mid-tier options. So for cash games, normally for me, I'm going to spend up on like 2 or 3 running backs and just get the floor of those running backs. But there's a lot of really solid mid-tier running backs on the slate at least. So Nick Chubb, solid option. Damian Williams, Fournette, Dalvin Cook. I mean, any of these guys are very much in play. A guy I really like here is Kerryon Johnson. He's been getting a lot of hype, but for good reason. They got rid of Theo Riddick in the offseason, so that just kind of secures Kerryon as almost a 3-down back. Now they do have C.J. Anderson. They do have the rookie Ty Johnson, but I don't see them getting too much work. The Lions, they seem pretty content with giving Kerryon a good amount of work here. Obviously he's a young guy too, so I think Kerryon's a really solid option here, and he's just too cheap at 5.8K. And the same thing here for Chris Carson. Really like this play as well. Seattle came out and said they want to target him 50 times in the receiving game. Obviously, he didn't get that much work, catching the ball last year, but they just seem like they want to give Carson a lot of work here. He's going to be a workhorse. They want to get him more incorporated in the passing game, which is obviously good. Now, Seattle's offense, probably not going to be that good, but they just really want to give Chris Carson as many touches as they can, and he's just too cheap here. And two, it's at home. They should, get out to a lead against Cincinnati, who's obviously not that good of a team. So I think Carson, Kerryon Johnson, 2 really solid options in the mid-tier. Now, Austin Eckler, it sounds like Melvin Gordon's going to hold out into the regular season. Now, we don't know how long. Eckler, I would like it if he was cheaper, like 5.5K. I like Eckler. He's a great PPR back. Obviously, they still have Justin Jackson as well. I think it's probably going to be like a 60-40 split with Eckler getting like 60% of the work, Justin Jackson 40% of the work. I just can't go with Eckler right now when there's guys like Chris Carson, Kerryon Johnson, 2 workhorses for just a couple hundred more, But I still think he's worth a look just because, he's a great PPR back. Let's see. So last guy I'll talk about here is Tony Pollard at 4.5K. So obviously we don't know yet if Zeke's going to hold out. They said they're confident they can get a deal done before week 1. So, but if there's no Zeke, Tony Pollard's going to be the chalk of the slate at 4.5K. He has looked pretty good in the preseason. The Cowboys have been raving about him. Again, he would get a lot of work with no Zeke. So I think he would be probably the chalkiest option on the slate if Zeke is out. If Zeke plays, obviously you can't go to Pollard. But so yeah, that's basically about it for running back. Okay. Let's move on to wide receiver. Again, wide receiver, any of the top guys, you can't go wrong. Odell, Julio, Mike Evans, all great plays. I'm going to talk about more like the cheaper guys and guys in the mid-range that I like. So a couple of these Minnesota guys, Thielen and Diggs, they just seem too cheap here. Atlanta's defense is not going to be good. This is going to be one of the higher over-unders for week 1 as well. So Thielen and Diggs, I think Thielen's probably going to be more popular, but both these guys do have a lot of upside. So I have no issue with either of those guys. Chris Godwin. So I already kind of talked about Jameis. Godwin's getting a lot of hype. Same with O.J. Howard. I like all 3 of these guys for week 1. San Francisco defense, nothing to be scared of. This is also going to be one of the higher over-unders for week 1. So Chris Godwin, I think he's too cheap at 6.2K. I think he's going to be pretty popular, though, because he's getting a lot of hype. But I do like him here at 6.2. Tyler Lockett, Seattle's wide receiving corpse is just like depleted. DK Metcalf is like injured. Moore's injured. They basically have no one besides Lockett. So just for that reason, I think he's a pretty good option here at 6K. Tyler Boyd, Cincinnati probably going to be playing from behind here. No A.J. Green. Boyd's a great PPR receiver, so I think he's another guy you can consider in the mid-range. Let's see. So, the Arizona receivers. Christian Kirk, I think, is going to be really chalky for week 1. There's been a lot of hype about him. Obviously, I have no issue with him. Arizona's offense, they're going to be, again, one of the fastest paced, if not the fastest paced offense in the NFL. So I have no issue with Kirk. I think he's going to be pretty chalky. But I don't mind the pivot to Larry Fitzgerald. I know he's older. I think he's like 36 now. But he's going to play out of the slot. He still showed he has a lot in him last year. So yeah, I think Larry Fitzgerald, again, I think Kirk's going to be really popular, but I think a solid pivot is to Larry Fitzgerald. So yeah, I think both those Arizona receivers are good options here. And then D.D. Westbrook. So he's been Nick Foles' favorite target so far. Jacksonville, they don't have a whole lot of talent receiver, so I think D.D. Westbrook's probably going to be their number 1 receiver. Probably going to be playing from behind too against Kansas City. So at 4.8K, I think he's another solid option here. And then the Carolina receivers. So we got DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel, both underpriced here at 5.5 and 4.2K respectively. Again, this is one of the higher over-unders for week 1. Now, I think Curtis Samuel is going to be the ultimate chalk, but for good reason. 4.2K is way too cheap for a starting receiver. Again, going to be one of the higher over-unders as well. So really like Curtis Samuel. He's been getting a lot of hype. DJ Moore is a good pivot, but you are going to have to play 1,300 more. He's going to be way less owned, but he's still a good option. Both these guys have good breakaway speed, so I do like the Carolina receivers a lot here for week 1. Let's see. Was there anyone else I wanted to talk about? If you wanted to go like really cheap, you could look to a guy like Cole Beasley or Amendola. Both these guys can play out of the slot. Should be like good PPR receivers. I don't think those guys would be the worst options for some salary relief. That's basically about it for wide receiver. So let's move on to tight end. So tight end, you can spend up a tight end, but probably not going to be the way I go. There's a lot of good cheap tight ends that I think paying up for tight ends, it just doesn't really make sense. Now, you definitely pay up for tight ends in tournaments because I think they're going to be low owned, like Kelsey, Kittle, Ertz. I think all those guys go pretty low owned. But there's just some really solid cheap tight ends that I like that I just don't think it makes sense to spend up for tight end in week 1. A mid-tier tight end that I like. So I've talked about the Tampa Bay offense a good amount here. Jameis, Chris Godwin, O.J. Howard. I like all 3 of those guys. O.J. Howard, his first couple of seasons only played in like 60% of the snaps, but now he's going to be out there basically the whole game. And obviously he's going to be one of the top targets for Jameis. So at 5K, I think he's a pretty good option. Evan Ingram, just because the Giants basically have no one else besides Saquon. So I think Evan Ingram's going to get a good amount of targets. Giants probably going to be playing from behind too, which is good. So I think Evan Ingram is another mid-tier tight end that you can consider. Hunter Henry, David Njoku, 2 cheap guys that are pretty solid. Jordan Reed, don't think I could go there because he's just too injury prone. And then Delaney Walker at 3.5K. Obviously, he was out, got injured in week 1 last year, was out for the whole year. He is getting up there in age, but still, Tennessee doesn't have a whole lot of options on offense. He's kind of, Marcus Mariota's safety blanket. So I think Delaney Walker is just too cheap here at 3.5K. I think he's a pretty good option. Olsen, again, I'm worried he's getting up there in age. He's been kind of injury prone the last 3 years, but I still think he's okay. He's too cheap at 3.2K, so I think he's another a good cheap option. We could look to Tyler Eifert, another guy who's been really injury prone as well. The rookie Hawkinson, but I don't know if he's going to start yet for week 1, so probably would hold off on him. Mark Andrews, Lamar Jackson has really liked him, but Baltimore does have a lot of tight ends, so I don't think I could go there. But like I said, there's a lot of guys in this 3 to 4K range that I think are really good options. So that's kind of my thoughts with tight end. And yeah, I think that's about it, guys. So I will have a video up more in depth, closer to when week one comes up. Probably make a video like a few days before. I'll have it up, going a more in depth breakdown. I'll talk about more cash game plays, GPP plays. I'll talk about try to talk about all the guys on the slate. So this was just kind of more of a general breakdown of my thoughts so far. Again, we got about a week and a half until the regular season starts. Really excited, but yeah, I think that's going to do it, guys. So again, if you have been enjoying the content, I would really appreciate if you would like this video and subscribe if you haven't. If you have any questions, you can leave in the comment section down below. It's also important to follow me on Twitter, guys. I will have it in the description below. Obviously, we still got a good amount of time before the slate starts, but I'll get my thoughts as we get like more injury news, stuff like that. So it is important to follow me on Twitter. And yes, I'll be back for another video. I'll have a video breaking down the last preseason slate. That's on Thursday, so I'll have a video up Wednesday night for that. So I will see you guys then.